I want to talk briefly today about sort of a little known issue that's coming up right now that I think could be a potential problem for towns as we go through this transitionary period that we're clearly in as a state and a community as we look forward and there's police reform and everything else that's going on. There's something in Massachusetts called basically part-time police officers. They're really called auxiliary police officers. And we've represented a number of auxiliary police officers over the years who are injured on duty. And there are special benefits to auxiliary officers depending what happens to them for replacement, not just of their injury, their pain, suffering, their medical bills, but you can actually receive compensation as well because you're missing out on your full-time job if you're caused an injury while you're working as a part-time officer. That being said, those officers have limited powers in Massachusetts. They make arrests under the supervision of a full-time officer, and they're really not supposed to make arrests unless there's really an emergency that would require them to, as opposed to somebody else, and they still can only do that in the presence of that full-time officer. Well, now, as the rules and regulations are changing, those special officers are really having trouble being fielded because they're going to have to go through substantial training for making arrests, which they're really not doing, and they just don't have time and the ability to do that since they're working a full-time career. This is something that's coming up right now in our state, and the reality is that small towns don't have a ton of police officers. There are dozens, if not at least 100 or so towns in the state that have small departments under 20, 30, really down to like 10 people, including chiefs and sergeants and whatnot. And they utilize part-time officers to fill the gaps. Well, if those officers go away and they have to hire more full-time officers, that's a substantial hit to a small town's budget. We'll see what happens, but it remains to be seen, and hopefully we can use some common sense to get through this period of change that we're in right now.